Kyrie Irving, obviously, no stranger to controversy. And then he became the spear point, because we saw before everything was going on that NBA players were starting to become a little skeptical about coming back. And, we were looking for names like who's saying all these anonymous quotes. And then, of course, Kyrie Irving's name emerges. And then, like, of course, like the popular criticism for that was like, well, he's not even playing. And, oh boy, here goes Kyrie again and blah, blah, blah. But when you further examine what he's saying is we need to re-examine what we're doing here because there's a lot going on that is obviously way more important than basketball or any other sports. So we need to just figure out like what is the best way to use our platform. And I feel like I'll just say it straight up. Like I feel like a lot of people are focusing on the fact that it's Kyrie and because of his history with the whole flat Earth stuff and the dysfunction at the end of that Cavaliers run. And like we kind of missed the message, but he was basically saying, I'm not with the systematic racism and the bullshit. And we need to figure out how to best address that because that's the most important thing going on right now. So, how do you feel about Kyrie, what he said, just in general, did he have, license to voice these issues?
He had every license to voice these issues. When you look at it, right, Kyrie might not be playing because of injury, but his team is involved, right? So of course he would want
Right.
to support. He would probably want to go to Orlando and be there for support of his team, regardless of the situation. I agree with almost everything Kyrie said. The only thing that I'd kind of take a second look at is where he said something smells a little fishy, because there's a group of conspiracy theorists out there that will kind of link that to say, hey, well, the NBA is intentionally trying to come back to create a distraction from all of this. And that will give me cause to pause because the NBA has been trying to figure out how to come back since the pandemic started, right? So this isn't something new where they're trying to intentionally come back and create a distraction away from Black Lives Matter and away just from civil justice. Right. This has been something they've been trying to navigate as well as all the other professional sports, that were
Yep.
interrupted during this time. So that's the only thing that that would kind of have me hesitate. But as far as him not being with the quote unquote systematic racism and the bullshit, he's absolutely right. For 400 years, people of color in this nation have been oppressed. And time again, we try to make a stand. We try to civilly protest and peacefully protest. We've rioted before, we've burned things down before. And at this point, I think people are just saying enough is enough. We were released quote unquote from slavery. We were made free without anything, right? So everyone else,
Definitely,
everyone
definitely.
else in this nation had a head start except us, and
Yeah.
we had to build from the ground up. We had a booming business in Tulsa, Oklahoma, with Black Wall Street, and that was burned down the minute it became successful. So there's just a bunch of things. There's a bunch of underlying things in this country that keep Black and people of color oppressed, and I think a lot of people are just saying enough is enough. We're living in the 21st century where everything is recorded on a camera phone, right? So none of this has
Yeah.
disappeared. It's just being exposed. And I think along with people that are just continuing to protest, I think the NBA players also have a voice and they realize their platform, and they would make a
Yeah.
huge stand if they decided not to play.
Yeah, look, I definitely agree. So I guess my next question is like understanding where Kyrie is coming from and also understanding the fact that Kyrie is not alone in these sentiments. Kyrie is the sitting vice president of the Players
Hmm.
Association, and he gives a voice to players who may be in the rank and file for speaking out and saying how they feel. Because obviously, if you're LeBron, if you're Giannis, if you're, Kawhi Leonard, if you're Paul George, you want to
Hmm.
play right now because, we know how fleeting a championship can be. We know how hard it is to get yourself in position, especially like in the Lakers situation. We made it to the end of the year with Anthony Davis healthy. that's we
That's an
we got to
accomplishment in
thank God
itself.
for that, and we don't know if we're gonna be able to do that again. Anthony Davis is in his prime, but we know his injury history. So I know LeBron is sitting there. We'll get to him later on, like in more detail. But I know he's sitting there like, hey, like, like I'm in my mid-30s. I don't know how long this is going to keep going, because Father Time, as we know, is undefeated and will forever remain undefeated. So, like, if you were an athlete, if you were an NBA player, would you want to play right now?
It's tough, because I understand the complexity of it all. Because on the one hand, you have legacy within the NBA confines, and then you have
Right.
historical legacy within just the social confines. So that struggle would be difficult for me. However, if you do want to play, I think I probably would want to play, but
Right.
I would make it my duty to voice my opinion on Black Lives Matter every single day the cameras are on me, because I saw the comment from Martin in here, just like Lou Will said, like, the return of basketball will become a distraction, whether you want it or not, right? And you're gonna have all these cameras, you're gonna
Yeah.
have all these reporters, they're gonna be all over Instagram, all over Twitter, just social media in general. And just the talking about just, points, rebounds, assists. Did you see what Kawhi did last night? Oh, that steal at the end of the game. Just speaking about what happens between the in the court is going to become a distraction. But the NBA players do have a platform, and all eyes will be on them. And I think using that platform to further the voice of the unheard is going to be imperative.
I know, like, as sports people, we're supposed to take a side and be strong in our debate, but there's real legitimacy to both sides as to whether these guys should come back to play or not. Because if the NBA does come back, the NBA is the globe's blackest league by far.
Yeah.
You know
Yep.
what I mean? Like, as no matter what we feel about the NFL, like, there's a lot of black players in there. The power of the players in the NFL pales in comparison to the powers of the players in the NBA. So if they were to come back and play, there is an undeniable platform that they would be in control of, because they would literally be the only thing on TV worth watching. ESPN is showing, like, I've seen, it looks like the Ocho
Right.
on ESPN right now. Like, I've seen all different types of sports, some of which I've never even seen before. You know what I mean? So, like, if we watch the NBA playoffs right now, literally it's all eyes on them. It would be the only major sport going on right now. So it's just like, if they were to return to play, um, would it be more of a help to what's going on right now, the civil unrest that's happening, or would it become a distraction? And I'll just go ahead and give my thoughts. Like, I feel like in the social media era, and I tweeted this yesterday, the NBA players need you, like, the matter of fact, the NBA needs the players more than the players need the NBA for the platform. If LeBron tweeted what Kyrie said, they would lock every basketball gym in the country. If LeBron came out and was like, look, we don't need to be playing, there's more important things going on right now, everybody would rally behind it. And that's like how I feel about it's more about the messenger than the message with Kyrie.
Hmm.
I've seen, and I'm just gonna say it, I've seen a majority of white media who have not said anything for the last month and a half, and then now they have something to say about Kyrie's
Yep.
entitlement. They have something to say about, even Adrian Wojnarowski, who is the guy we look to for all the scoops.
The
The literal
terminology. Yeah.
headline for his the literal headline for his article is Kyrie the
Yeah.
Disruptor, and you can't compare, a flat Earth theory or like whatever to what's going on right now, because everything Kyrie is concerned about is 100% on the money. It is a legitimate question whether basketball will help or aid, or help or hinder what's going on in the streets right now. And we I wrote an article saying that basketball shouldn't come back, but then I pulled a Skip Bayless. We had a Big Facts article, and I was like, maybe they can use the
Hmm.
platform to amplify their voice after, post game. And I'm sure there'll be kneeling, and there will be
We've seen.
T-shirts, and there
Yep.
will be this, and there will be that. You know what I mean? Like all of that. But I'm thinking yesterday, if LeBron tweets something right now, if LeBron tweeted hi right now, it's 20,000
Mm-hmm.
retweets. They don't need these people. You
Yeah.
know, they don't need the NBA. They don't need to be playing basketball to do all that. They just don't. That's just my personal opinion. So like, how do you feel about basketball, the NBA? If LeBron scored 60 last night, like for example, someone died in Atlanta last night in a Wendy's I almost cursed in a Wendy's drive-through. Someone
Talk about
died
it.
last night in a Wendy's drive. I told you I've been reading my Bible. I'm trying to
Listen,
stop. Someone died last night in a Wendy's drive-through. If LeBron dropped 60 last night, what are me and you talking
we're
about right
talking
now?
about,
I don't want to
yeah.
write about Yeah, we're talking about
Mm-hmm.
Bron. We're talking about what's going to happen in the next game.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk X's and O's right now. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like basketball, if it comes back, do you feel like it amplifies their voice? Because I just personally feel like in the social media era, whatever they say is going viral
Right.
anyway.
No, I think they, so there's two separate parts, right? I think they can use the platform and the cameras to directly speak to the people and amplify themselves.
Right.
However, I do agree with you. They don't need that platform. And this is part of what's been going on in the NBA for years, right? All we've had, and I'm just gonna call it for what it is. We've had a lot of these like white journalists and white media coming out as these guys are, prima donnas. They want to worry about their brand before they worry about basketball. And this is the purpose, right? They've been building their personal brands all this time for moments like these. LeBron could tweet, Kyrie could tweet, KD could tweet. It will go viral in a minute, right? And I think
Instantly.
using their own personal brand as a platform is enough amplification to get whatever message they want out, right? We just last week we had what's her name, Laura Ingraham, the shut up and dribble lady, and LeBron came right back at her. LeBron came right back at Drew Brees when he talked about he wouldn't tolerate any disrespecting of the flag, and both of those tweets went viral. So they don't need the NBA to come back. But I do think if it does come back because of monetary issues or whatever the case may be, I do think it's their duty to kind of set aside X amount of time every day to address the issue. Because as you said, if LeBron has 60, we're talking about game 2, we're talking about game 3, we're talking about these series, we're talking about when's the next season starting, we're talking about what teams players can draft because of the holes on their roster. We're talking about Kawhi and Paul George coming up on the last year of their deals next season. And if they're going to re-up, we're going to talk about Giannis and his free agency. So the NBA in itself is a distraction, but I do think the players should use that platform, although they don't need it, to kind of amplify the message.
Yeah, I mean, if they do return to play, in fairness to the NBA and Adam Silver, in my opinion, is the most progressive commissioner in all of major sports globally. He's done, in my opinion, a great job of everything from the Donald Sterling controversy up until now. Like, he's faced a lot in his term as commissioner. So I'm sure the NBA will do everything they can. And a statement just came out today that the NBA is aware of the concerns of the NBPA and its players about how this would impact what's going on the ground right now. And they plan to work with them should the season return about how to best rectify that and how to best amplify players'
Mm-hmm.
voices. But I just feel like when Kyrie said what he said and the fallout, I just feel like it further cemented the point. Like, even Austin Rivers specifically in his Instagram post was like, like it could be a distraction, blah, blah, blah. I'm just of the mindset we don't need a distraction.
We don't.
Because ever since these protests started because of police brutality, and all we've seen is continued police brutality during police brutality protests. So that means they think we still playing and we not. You know what I'm saying? It's like we're like, this is not a game. This is not something that's gonna go away in a month. Like, because we've seen this before. We've seen people killed by police. There's social media outrage for a month and a half, and then it's back to normal. This cannot go back to normal.
Mm-hmm.
And applying the NBA coming back to play, we're talking about X's and O's as a distraction. That's just going to water down what's really supposed to be going on right now. We've seen Enes Kanter in the streets. We've seen Russell Westbrook and Trae Young and LeBron and like in the streets making efforts to amplify the voices of black voters and all of that stuff. And I just think distracting from that by playing, having us talk about the playoffs, because look, if the NBA playoffs started today, it leads First Take tomorrow. It leads, like any major sports show, they're talking about that. And right now, the sports shows are talking about injustice, and it needs to stay that way because the violence is continuing as we speak. People have continued to die and be violated. We saw just last week or a week and a half ago, an elderly man pushed to the ground, bleeding from his ear. So until they stop, we just can't. That's just my opinion. And I love basketball. Like that's what we do. That's why we're here. But we just have to realize that some things are just simply more important, and there's just not time for sports right now. And
let me say this, man.
Go on.
Excuse my French. It took a fucking pandemic, right, to shut everything down in order for us to focus on Black Lives Matter and social injustice. A pandemic to the point where this isn't even like, it's about black and white at its core, but
time out, because we checking in from Israel.
Ooh, Israel.
Shout out to our international base. That is big time. Shout out to our international base. But continue.
So it's a black and white thing at its core, but it's a social thing. It's a human thing, right? At the end of the day, 20, 30 years down the line, you're either going to be on the right or the wrong side of history. And it took a pandemic to shut down sports, to shut down entertainment, to shut down concerts, to shut down sitcoms, no movies, no happy hours with your friend. It took everything shut down for us to be able to focus on social injustices in this country. And to put more emphasis on that, it's in an election year where the leader of the quote unquote free world is just putting vernacular and verbiage and language out there to further divide the country. Right.
Inciting a race war.
So basketball, as you said, will just intrinsically become a distraction because it's what we're going to talk about. All these networks, Fox Sports, ESPN, The Ringer, Basketball Society, Bleacher Report, all of these networks are going to be focusing on the court because we need a distraction. We don't need a distraction. Distraction leads to inaction, right? When you're distracted with something else, that means you're not focusing on the task at hand, right? And I think just that by itself is just going to take away from the momentum of the movement. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of people out there wanting to march, but they're probably going to want to sit down for that Game 7. They're probably going to want to hop on a Zoom with their friends for that Game 7 or congregate in the backyard or go grab and go drinks and watch the game somewhere, right? And I think we need this momentum. It's been a while, and the protests have been going on for what, like 2.5 weeks now. And, just looking historically, right, you've had protests going for a month, for 3 months, for 6 months. Like those sit-ins in Selma were 6 months. They took 6 months to get their goal accomplished. And if we don't act and we don't keep pushing, we don't keep our foot on the gas, this thing is going to die out. And basketball could potentially be the catalyst, leading into the football season, because as much as we're talking about basketball coming back in July, we're hearing that the football is trying to start on time in September, right? So that's just going to be a whole other story, right? And I think all of that, just sports in general, people keep saying we need a distraction, we need to do this, we need to do that. No, the time is now, and we need to focus on the task at hand.
Look, I agree. And let's move on to the NBA's plan to come back anyway, right? Let's say they come back because, for all intents and purposes, despite what me or you say, they're still marching towards a comeback. They voted, in my opinion, irresponsibly to come back, despite having said, shout out to Steve B on the check-in, all of that. But what's Martin saying? Look, it's true. Martin says, and he said before, like what he just said, like we could still use basketball to like make an impact.
Absolutely.
I just don't think and absolutely, because like it's basketball. It doesn't have to be NBA. It doesn't have to be, tune into the NBA playoffs tonight. This is the blackest league in the world. You understand me? Whatever these guys say during this time, it takes precedence over what MLB players say, over what NASCAR says, over what NFL says. If they say something, it don't matter nothing's going on right now. You know what I'm saying? So they don't need the league. They don't need to be playing. You don't have to score 30 points the night before to be
Yep.
heard. Because it doesn't matter. This is the blackest league there is. It's what is the fast growing league globally. One of the fastest growing leagues globally, rivaling soccer now globally.
Yep.
It is what it is. So anything these guys say is automatically going to be amplified. Period. Point blank.
And Martin is absolutely right? Basketball is way bigger than the NBA. Hence our name, Basketball Society. We are not NBA Society. We talk about all realms, basketball, right? And I think basketball can serve and can be of service within the communities. And the only reason we're talking about the NBA is because they're going to have the national TV platform, right? Those kids working on their games in the local communities, they're not going to be on TV. It's going to be the NBA, its organization, and its players that are going to be on the TV, causing the distraction, right? Because as you said, these sports shows will lead with that talk instead of injustice. But basketball as a whole can definitely serve society.
Definitely. And then even if you look a little bit deeper, as the world continues to open up, I read a tweet the other day. Kids in New York City, and I don't know if you can attest to this, I don't live in New York, kids are playing soccer, kids are playing baseball. I'll tell you right now, the hoops in my town, they're not
up in my town either.
The hoops in New York City, they're still not up. That's a problem. Because who plays basketball? We play basketball. They don't want to see us, playing basketball with our shirts off, getting all rowdy like that. Don't think that is not deliberate on the part of government and all of that. These people need to understand that we are not playing.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand what Kyrie's saying. Like, hey, we have a chance here to really make history. We have a chance here to not be, the good old boy and put money in owners' pockets by just going on and playing so that, Clay Travis or like whoever else can talk about basketball finally, because Woj, I'm sorry, it
was clickbait. Let's
noticeably silent.
Notice it, and like not just
I love
Woj. Yeah. It was clickbait. Calling him a disruptor, it's a trigger word, right? And people already have their feelings about Kyrie Irving. He wanted out of Cleveland. He got traded to Boston. He had the Mamba mentality. He sounded like Kobe on his entire first take spiel, talking to Stephen A. and Max, right? Then he moves on to Brooklyn to play with KD. So people already don't like Kyrie, right? You have a whole slew of fans in Boston that don't like him.
He knows
a whole slew
that.
Of fans in Cleveland that don't like him. Right? You have murmurs going around the league, all these rumors about, Kyrie's not good in the locker room and this and that, when you have the star of the Boston Celtics, Jason Tatum, say that Kyrie is misunderstood, right? So, and I think that just that disruptor, and this is what we're talking about, right? The disruptor. Why is he a disruptor? Because he had a flat earth theory? Okay, boom. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. Clearly, we don't agree with him.
Because he didn't want to be second fiddle to Bron and be lectured every time. They literally, they basically asked this man how it's like to have LeBron as a father figure. And people always talk about
I
how
literally
Kyrie
have my father. What are you talking about?
Grown ass man, like you talking to me like all of that stuff. So like a lot of people talk about how Kyrie treats the media. You gotta look at it from the other side too. It's absolutely disrespectful. You know what I'm saying? So it's
the same thing. This the same thing they do to J.R. Smith, and we talked about it on Twitter a couple weeks ago. We saw what happened in Cali. But let me know if anyone on this live or anyone in their house would see someone demolishing their car and not do something about it. Just let me know.
Yeah, look, it's definitely the case. So moving on, let's say the NBA comes back, right? So with the whole pandemic going on, their plan is obviously Disney. They're going to bring approximately 1,600 people to Disney. That's, players and like what it is, 3 family members, whatever security detail they may need, and X, Y, and Z. Florida just yesterday reported its highest amount of new cases ever, new record. And I think also, like, as much as, again, in our Woj's report, he talked about how Kyrie asked like mundane questions, the week before about, what beverages will be served to players or whatever. Those questions may be mundane, but to me, that also waters down the importance of what Kyrie is asking now. And even though Kyrie may have been on board the week before, with new information as humans, we need to be able to grow and adjust. That's not an option, that's imperative. So as the thing as the things go on, and as you look at what's going on around the world, as people continue to die, like even as I said, someone died in Atlanta last night. So you need to continue to be fluid and reevaluate your thinking as time goes on. And Kyrie did that. And Kyrie obviously had conversations with rank and file players within the league that may not be superstars on championship contenders, that have genuine and valid concerns about returning to play with everything that's going on. Cases are rising in 22 out of the 50 states as we speak due to aggressive reopenings and such to, let's face it, save the economy, because that's also what we need. So, and they offer an opt-out option for players who don't want to play and such and such. But, you know, I just really question the NBA, who initially said they agreed on everything except for how to keep people safe. So they agreed on the structure, they agreed on how many teams they were bringing back, they agreed on everything else except, to me, the most important part, which is lives. Period, point blank. So how do you feel about that? The safety of the bubble. Would you go to the bubble? And people have ignored. Before even Kyrie said what he said, Melo went on and also voiced the same exact concerns about coming back and the potential risk it serves to players and their families.
Let me ask you a couple questions, right? So NBA shut down back in March. It's like around March 12th, somewhere around the 12th to the 14th. Did we have a vaccine for COVID-19 then? Do we have a vaccine today?
Yeah, it's still like a year away.
Second question. Back when the NBA shut down, did we have valid treatment for COVID-19? Do we have valid treatment today? So what's safer? People are feeling better? This is what I don't understand, right? Had 1918 Spanish flu, all of this, right? Now the flu is seasonal. What do they tell us every season? Wash your hands, practice good hygiene. People still die and catch the flu every year. Just last year, when my wife was pregnant, both her and I caught the flu in the same weekend, and we practiced good hygiene. So how is telling people to practice good hygiene this time around going to stop or reduce the spread of COVID-19? It's not, right? And I think that was part of the media's, trying to, issue like fear, to people to get them to practice good hygiene. But I think it's just ingrained in people. Either you do or you don't, right? So that's just one part of it. Second part, China tried the bubble. They tried the bubble idea, right? It didn't work. And I think the NBA has an idea that somehow everyone's going to stay within this bubble. No one's going to really venture out. And in theory, the bubble works. You bring everyone in, you isolate them for 2 weeks, you test them every day, you keep everyone in the bubble, and no one catches it. That's the ideal way that the bubble would work. But we don't live in an ideal world. People are going to want to see family.
Sure don't.
They're going to want to see friends. They might not want the coffee that's in the resort. They might want to go to the Starbucks or the Dunkin' Donuts up the street. You know what I'm saying? And I think those little interactions and having the ability to leave the campus and come back, that's what's going to screw with the bubble, regardless of where it's placed or how isolated it is. On top of that, right, I think what we read was that family members would be limited to 3 at a time, and they'd only be allowed if your team made it past the first round or something. Now you got to have them isolated. Right. Now you got to test all of them, right? And the concept of exposure is something people don't understand. 3 family members for LeBron James going to the bubble doesn't only expose them to 3 people. Each of those 3 individuals were probably exposed to more people back in their hometowns before they came into the bubble. Yep. So not only are you exposed to those 3, you're exposed to everyone else those 3 people have been around in the past 2 weeks. And that's what people don't seem to understand, right? And so with that being said, the bubble concept can work in theory. I don't know that it's going to work, because we've seen it fail already, and I'm just not confident in people staying in the bubble. You've had conservatives march into Capitol buildings with assault rifles because they wanted to open salons and malls and open outside back up, right? And you're gonna expect these basketball players, who all of them has said they use some type of distraction to kind of calm down and come down from the game and and then come back and refocus. I don't see them just going to the gym, playing a game, watching the next team, and then going back to their room and playing Xbox or PlayStation or something. It's just, to me, it's just not realistic. So while the bubble concept can work in theory, I don't think it's going to work. I do pray it works. I hope no one gets sick, but it's going to be very, very difficult to execute.
So they have an opt-out option, or at least they've discussed it about how if players don't feel comfortable playing, they don't have to play. Now you won't get paid, but you also won't get penalized. Now that sounds great on paper, but for those of us who have been in a locker room before, if you're a role player on a significant role player on a championship team, but you're worried about yourself, your health, your family's at home health, what how do you go to your teammates and be like, guys, I don't know if I can do this. I think that's the one thing that's slipping under the radar is like, it's one thing if you say like, all right, if you don't want to play, you don't have to play, cool, we understand what's going on, blah, blah, blah. But you got to stare, 11 other guys in the face and be like, I'm not going to rock with y'all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy because like everyone's going to say the right thing, in front of cameras or put it in writing, some things are bigger than basketball, family first, health first. Obviously, if you're not healthy, you can't play the game in the first place. But at the end of the day, to your point, if you're the sixth man or even the seventh man and you provide a detrimental role and a skill for that team and you're telling them you can't play and you're in contention for a championship, I don't see how that bodes over well, number one. Number two, going forward, now your name is kind of tarnished, right? Because if you're trying to look for that big money contract, someone may say, when the pressure comes, he might not come through. We had this whole bubble concept. We had it safe, but he didn't want to come play. So I think not only will it mess you up with your current team, it could mess you up with your future teams to come.
Look, I couldn't completely agree. So, so the NBA, they decided to bring back 22 teams. They're going to do the poll playing round and stuff like that. It's been widely circulated as like a rumor or whatever, but like, look, let's face it. They wanted Zion to be a part of
That's
the
the
playoffs.
only.
And just in my personal, yeah, and that's my personal opinion. And like, I just want to know your thoughts. The NBA brought too many teams.
They brought
back.
way too many
Like,
teams
we're
back.
in the middle.
I'm gonna just cut you off right there because they brought.
You know where I'm going. You know where I'm
too
going.
Many teams back. They should have just kept it to the 8 in each conference and figured out a playoff format, right? Have the teams scrimmage with each other for 10 days, 2 weeks, get that ramp up period going, get that rhythm, get the blood flowing, get the competition
Same
going,
concept.
right?
Yep.
And then start the playoffs. You don't need 8 regular season games to come back. For what? You got 3 teams in the Western Conference that are sitting 3.5 games back of the 8th seed with 8 games to play. They're gonna have to damn near be perfect in those.
They got to win out.
They got to win out to even win it to get it in the first place. And I think, the number I saw was like 6, right? So you have to be like within 6 games reach. So let me ask you something. I think the San Antonio Spurs are 5.5 games back with 8 games to play. How the hell are they gonna make? Hell are they supposed to make the playoff?
No way.
It just mathematically, it just doesn't make sense. And in a regular season where there is no pandemic, you would start seeing the numbers on the ESPNs, on the basketball societies, right? You would have the teams towards the end, and you would kind of start just knocking people off like, yep, not too many games left. Not too many games left. We don't know what the schedule is, right? Granted, but at the same time, It's just not enough games to make up that kind of difference. Way too many teams.
Yeah,
it was definitely the Zion factor. I don't know that there was any Melo factor, but Portland's definitely there. There's probably a Damian Lillard factor to it, and then Ja Morant playing however many games.
Yeah, look, I definitely agree. So, obviously, what Woj, quoted in his article, Kyrie is, once again, at odds with LeBron, who obviously time is ticking. We understand how he's chasing the legacy of Jordan. In the GOAT debate, championships at this point is probably the main factor that separates LeBron from Jordan in the eyes who feel like Jordan is still the GOAT. So, how do you feel about LeBron clearly still being in favor of playing? And he says he feels like he can continue to fight social injustice while playing basketball, which I don't disagree with. LeBron has been essentially the Jim Brown of our generation. Never been afraid to use this platform, never been afraid to stick his neck out, never been afraid to say what he needs to say, for his people. Um, but how do you feel about LeBron? How much do you care about his chase for his legacy? How much do you care about what this season could potentially mean to him? Because no matter how you feel about whether the NBA should come out or not, this is obviously huge in terms of the time he has left and the effect that it could have on his career if he's robbed of this opportunity to win championships. Personally, I think that's too bad. But how do you feel?
I think he knows Father Time is ticking, and I think he knows this could potentially be one of his last runs. And I think that's what this is all about, right? Because if we can just dial the clock back 1 year, right? Let's say all of this takes place last year when the Lakers were clearly, not in the playoff picture. What would be his motive to want to
His
what
stance,
would be
yeah.
his motive, right? The Lakers wouldn't even be in the playoff push.
If it was last
Right.
season, right, how would he
So
feel,
being
right?
that they're the number one seed in the West, this is literally the best opportunity he's had since 2016 to win another title and to get number 4, right? And what's he been hearing all along? When you come to LA, it's about a ring. It's not about MVP. It's not about all stars. It's not about 50 wins. It's titles, right? Every Laker great has brought a title to LA. When you talk about Kobe, you talk about Shaq, you talk about Magic, Kareem, they've all got titles. And if LeBron wants to be on that pantheon of Laker greats, then he has to bring a title to LA. So I do think that's what this is all about. And at the same time, I don't think it diminishes his causes, right? Like he makes it well known, verbally with his actions, opening up a school. Time and time again, he's come out and spoken out against this. So I don't think it diminishes in that factor. But I do think there are that subset of people that will group it with, oh, the NBA is a distraction with LeBron's comments.
I completely agree. So I'm gonna group these next two in one. So we're talking business
Mm-hmm.
now. So Donovan Mitchell and other young players, let it be known, Donovan Mitchell is entering a contract year. These guys have not played basketball, 5-on-5 full, mid-season contact in a few months now. Now you're bringing guys back, and Donovan Mitchell, raised what I thought was a valid concern about injury risk for these guys who are going to come back and try to go full throttle. Again, potentially like Donovan Mitchell in contract years, you try and get off your rookie contract and get a big deal. You go and blow a hammy because you haven't been playing basketball. Now all of a sudden the prospects for your next 4 or 5 years may
Mm-hmm.
change. And then also with the effects on the CBA, if guys do miss this season or if next season is missed or whatever, because we're already talking about a compromised 2020-21 season starting in, ideally Christmas and then continuing on. So these guys are going to lose money. That is valid, that, there are definite financial implications to this. Me personally, I I understand that guys need money. Um, I am not worried about how NBA guys are going to eat. There is enough money amongst all of them. If they were really in coalition with each other, they have one of the strongest unions. To me, the guys who are making mega bucks need to be aware of that. And in the past, they've done it, for previous lockouts. They make a pool for guys who may need some extra funds or extra help. And I just think that they need to be prepared to do that
Mm-hmm.
again. So how do you feel about the financial implications of what's coming up? If they do miss time, if they do not play the rest of this season, they do miss out on all these dollars, and the owners then rip up the current CBA agreement, which right now is about 50-50 for basketball revenue, and try to get something more favorable.
So I think that this is like multi-layered, right? And I think the NBA players themselves have a genuine concern about their well-being, their financial well-being. And I kind of just equate it to like the normal everyday, working man, right? You're going to live up to your means, right? So your assets are only as great as your liabilities, whatever they are, right? So if you're making a little bit of money, you might be driving a hoopty. You're making a lot of money, you're probably going to be driving a Phantom or something like that, right? So the ratios are always going to stay proportional to what you're making. So in that respect, I understand them having concern about their financial loss, but at the same time, to your point, I'm not worried about how they're going to eat. They're making mega bucks. almost all of them are millionaires. You know, they're getting there. I think they can support themselves. I think the players' union has to take it upon itself to, as you said, create that pool and look out for each other. That's the whole point of the union in the first place. But I do
Yep.
think there is, excuse me, there is genuine concern about even their health, right? I don't think 8 games is enough. You know, I've always thought about it like in terms of like me playing like high school basketball or whatever, and like what it would take for me to kind of really get a rhythm and get going. And when it comes to the NBA, like I listen to a lot of the talking heads that have been around the league for years that are covered there, that have spoken to players. 8 games is just simply not enough to get to a good rhythm to play in the playoffs. And I
Yep.
think what we're going to end up having is a watered down quality playoffs. And, you know, intrinsically, I think that's what's going to create this whole asterisk postseason for a lot of people. So I get it. The players don't want to get injured. I wouldn't want to get injured. We saw what happened to KD last year, and that's a prime KD. That's like one of the greatest scorers of all time, KD. You got a lot of guys that are just role players that are good at what they do that might not be so good
Yeah.
after a critical injury. So from that respect, I completely agree with Donovan Mitchell. There's just a lot of concern, man. This is an unprecedented time financially, physically, mentally. There's just things they have to tackle. These are all great questions they bring up, and I think they really have to address these before they just jump, you know, for the TV money, for the sake of these contracts, for the sponsors or whatever may have you. These are all legitimate concerns that need to be attacked prior. But you know, as you said, financially, this is going to just end up having a big impact on what the next CBA is, right? Because they're going to have to change a lot of the language around there for, let's say, like acts of God, right? Like this pandemic.
Yep.
If players decide not to play, obviously, like you can't really fault them, right? This is the bubble is not 100%. It's not a safety. It's not a vaccine. It's not treatment. So if you're
Right.
telling a player to come and potentially risk their health, that has to be written into the contract somewhere, right? The length of contracts are going to change, the amount of money, all these max deals are going to change. And because of the loss of revenue from the TV deals this year, you know, from the lack of games, I think the salary cap is inevitably going to drop too. So
Certainly.
that
Still,
whole
if
max
yeah,
deal thing, like we might be seeing the inception of the end of this super team era.
yeah, I definitely agree because especially with teams like the Warriors who are looking to rebuild, if your salary cap gets slashed and previously people were optimistic about the Warriors' future, like you bring Steph back, you bring Clay back, you sign a guy, you got Wiggins there who is a proven 20-point per game scorer, and I think to me, he's an upgrade on Harrison Barnes from that 2016 team, and like you continue to build, but like at this point you might not be able to build. So that's definitely something to consider. So I mean, to wrap up, just overall, everything considered, what would you like to see happen going forward with the NBA? Should they play? Do you want them to play? I'll go like I just feel like I understand the implications on both sides. I just personally think there's too many more important things going on right now. I think when it comes to real change in America and globally at that, the change has always come with the people hitting the streets. And I just don't think basketball happening right now, which is what people are clearly starving for, is what needs to happen because people need to continue to, your only content right now should be what's going on in the streets. That's just my opinion.
So for me, I selfishly want to see them play just because I miss basketball, and part of
Right.
that is because I think they're going to play, right? Because there's the selfish reasoning that I feel, and then there's the realistic thing that I see happening. And I've always said like I saw them. Like I was just listening to podcasts the past couple of weeks, and to me, it just increasingly sounded like they were gonna play. So I kind of just embraced that and said, okay, they're gonna play. So this is what I want to see happen. On the flip side, heart of hearts, I don't think they should be playing for a Black Lives Matter reason, for the pandemic reason. Like everything, like we are the only country in the world that did not fully shut down and we're reopening. Not because it's safer, but because we want to save the economy.
We need
And it's
it.
like, it's mind boggling to me because when you have the lieutenant governor of Texas literally saying verbatim, there are more important things to life than living, that's something that I can't understand, right? And I think everything should be shut down. I think we should be focusing on these injustices. I think we should be trying to keep everyone safe until we have a viable treatment and until we start seeing action in the Black communities, right? The cops that went into Breonna Taylor's house and shot her in her bed are still free today. These are the things that
Yep, yep, yep,
need attention, and not what players dropped 45 points in a game one last night.
yep. I completely agree. So at this point, like, look, I agree with what you're saying. I think there's more important things going on. I think there's cops that still need to be in jail. I think there's district attorneys that still need to be emailed, police chiefs that still need to resign. And our work is far from undone. And I just personally feel like basketball is going to provide a distraction that most people want, so they don't have to focus on what's going on right now. But right now, we need to be focused on what's going on
Absolutely.
right now.
We need to embrace the uncomfortability of these conversations and discussions to create change. And without that, we're just going to be stuck where we've been the past 400 years.
100%. So that's going to wrap it up for us here. Just definitely make sure to drop a comment below. Once again, it's Justin, coming out of New Jersey. It's Felix coming out of New York. Should basketball come back? Let us know. We'll just see what happens next. And everybody, please just stay safe
All
out
right.
there.
Stay safe, y'all.